Michelle Bachmann actually predicted that I would bring about the biblical end of days. Now that's a legacy. That's big. I mean, Lincoln, Washington, they didn't do that. This morning, the Supreme Court recognized that the Constitution guarantees marriage equality. In doing so, they've reaffirmed that all Americans are entitled to the equal protection of the law. That all people should be treated equally, regardless of who they are or who they love. This decision will end the patchwork system we currently have. It will end the uncertainty hundreds of thousands of same-sex couples face from not knowing whether their marriage, legitimate in the eyes of one state, will remain if they decide to move or even visit another. This ruling will strengthen all of our communities by offering to all loving same-sex couples the dignity of marriage across this great land. Thank you.
Is the age when kids are learning their 1, 2, 3s, their ABCs, and now there's a California elementary school that is a bit under fire after children age 5 through 9 are now they had 2 days of lessons on gender diversity, using toys and illustrations to explain all of this. Edward Dragan supports the diversity.
In a California elementary school, along with learning their ABCs, first and second graders are getting a 1-hour lesson on gender diversity. A California school has hired a gender coach to teach students that there's more than one way to be a boy or a girl. All right, let's talk about it with Shannon Price Minter, Board of Faith in America Chair and Legal Director for the Center for Lesbian Rights, and Brad Dacus, President of the Conservative
cover of exposing white privilege. They're now teaching in Kentucky under federal grants. We have, it's mainstream news, 5-year-olds about how to exchange gender fluids, I can't even say this on air. I can't. I was reading what they're teaching 5-year-olds, and I didn't even know about this.
On gender diversity is drawing outrage from some conservative groups. Correspondent Claudia Cowan takes a fair and balanced look.
I see a lot of hands.
Instead of the 3 R's, these elementary school kids in Oakland spent class time focusing on gender diversity and how they can choose to be a boy or a girl or both.
Gender identity is about in here. It's about what's up here and in here.
As part of a program set to combat bullying, Redwood Heights Elementary brought in Gender Spectrum, an activist group whose mission is to create more gender-sensitive environments for kids.
True or false? Animals have only 2 genders.
These 4th graders were told that in nature, things aren't always what they seem. Some dolphins have both boy and girl parts, and clownfish can switch genders. Gender Spectrum says that diversity applies to people, too.
People can be girls, feel like girls, they can feel like boys, they can feel like both, and they can even feel like, as I said, kind of like neither.
Critics say these lessons amount to indoctrination.
To kind of bring everybody up to speed, a young man went into a historically black church there last night, killing 9 people after sitting through Bible study. They're still trying to investigate if it was a hate crime or whatever the case may be. He has been arrested, but still just a lot of unanswered questions. And Pastor, I just reached out to you and see if maybe you could kind of help us as Christians. How should we look at this? How should we deal with this? Kind of talk about it, Pastor.
Well, Carmina, this is what the Bible considers the beginning of sorrows. I would love to preach everything's gonna be okay message, and if we all just do this or that, we won't have to endure some of these kinds of tribulations. But the Bible speaks explicitly. Jesus warned us of these times. I believe the church has been so comfortable and laxed, and also the church has been so infused in politics and the media's propaganda that they have totally lost sight of what the Word of God teaches us. And Jesus sat his disciples down and warned them of these times. Matthew 24:7, he starts out saying, "For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilence, earthquakes in divers places." Now we know even in Texas we've experienced some very inclement weather, weird weather, earthquakes also in Texas. So the world is hemorrhaging just as Jesus had said it would. And then he said right after that, these are the beginning of sorrows. He said they will deliver you up to be afflicted, they shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Then shall many be offended, that begin to betray one another, hate one another. Then many false prophets will arise, and they will deceive many. And because of the sin in the land, the love of many will wax cold, meaning that people will begin to become lovers of themselves, as 2 Timothy 3 tells us. And then he says, but he that shall endure it to the end, those are the ones that are going to be saved. So, this is what we're looking at now. Nation against nation. The word nation there is the Greek word ethnos, which is ethnic, ethnic group, which is where we get our word ethnic group or ethnicity. Okay. So Jesus is saying ethnicity is going to rise against ethnicity, meaning black against white, like we're seeing here in America. And as you can tell, the media is also chiming in, trying to make this and all other things black against white, white against black. I went on CNN's website and it said, white man kills 9 in a church massacre. I've never seen a headline like that. Usually it says a gunman, usually it says a young gunman. I've never seen a headline that says white man. And so this is what they're doing. They are pushing this end-time racial war, stirring it up. And the saddest part about it, Carmina, is, and don't get me wrong, this is a tragic event. It's a tragic event. It could happen anywhere, not just at a church. It could happen anywhere, but it's sad that it did happen in the church. But the Bible says that we're going to be killed for his name, or we were going to be persecuted. And so all of this, us being so comfortable and just sitting back and chilling in our good cars, our good homes, and good jobs and all that we have as believers, we forget that the Bible tells us that those that live godly will suffer persecution. And he even said in John, he that loveth his life shall lose it, and he that hateth his life in this world shall keep it in the next world, or life eternal. So these are some things that we need to really begin to talk about. Just a couple of weeks ago in our church, I got up to preach a message, and the Holy Spirit just took over. And
we're trying to stop the protesters. This is your neighborhood. What has this become?
I told you guys from the jump that this was going to happen. This happened as a result of the way the situation was carried. This did not happen as a result of that young man's death. This happened as a result of the way the situation was handled.
But you said today, is this what you expected? Do you think this should be happening?
I do not think that this should be happening. Did I expect this? I knew that my city, this is not organized. This is just spontaneous, basically.
A week ago, you were trying to grab the mic from me, yelling F this, F that on the TV. I know you apologized for it. We even took a selfie later on. But now your neighborhood, your town, your neighborhood is on fire and burning. You realized today, over the weekend, that this was not the way.
I knew it wasn't. But see, the politicians, the people involved, allowed this to happen. They knew this, they allowed this to happen.
This is the frustration in the neighborhood. It is. Yes, sir.
A prime example. Before they hit CVS, the SWAT team stood up there and watched them go into it. They allowed it to happen. They could have moved down here like they've done and stopped it, but they allowed it to happen.
This is precisely what, and you were down here, I take it. This is precisely what you were saying earlier, Wolf, that they weren't in an aggressive police.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
What I was suggesting, you are absolutely right that John McCain has not talked about my Muslim faith, and you're absolutely right that that has not come my Christian faith.
Are the same as the Nazis, who slaughtered millions of people before and during World War II. There's no difference in the mentality, none at all. And once again, the world is standing by doing little, while the ISIS menace grows, spreading all over the Middle East and North Africa. President Obama is not taking the lead. His stated 60-nation coalition is invisible, and the other nations of the world are even worse. How long are these atrocities going to continue before the world unites against these savages?
So O'Reilly last night calling ISIS modern-day Nazis. This is a day after we're told that ISIS has abducted as many as 90 Christians in northeastern Syria, including women and children. It's taking control of new territory in places like Iraq and Syria. And critics say, well, the White House is repeating history by not doing enough to stop.
Well, they certainly would like land. They'd like the globe. They'd like the caliphate. But the immediate target are Christians, Jews, Yazidis, other minorities, but especially Christians. Because Christian civilization in that region predates Islam. I mean, it's been there for 2,000 years. Bill, the first 1,000 years of Christianity was about the greater Middle East and North Africa. Those are the cities where the thinkers were, the saints, the theologians. There were far more Christians in the Middle East back then than there were in Europe, much of which was still pagan in this far north. But what we are seeing now is an Islamist attempt to exterminate the last vestiges of Christian civilization.
O'Reilly's right.
It's happening again, and it is a genuine Holocaust against Christians. And Bill, these Christians are kidnapped. Our president does nothing. Christians are tortured and even crucified publicly. Our president does nothing. Christian women are kidnapped and raped again. Our president does nothing. Christians are driven from their homes in the Middle East by the hundreds of thousands, slaughtered by the tens of thousands, and our president does nothing. The reincarnation of Pontius Pilate washing his hands of it.
State
Department, but this blood's not coming off.
State Department, we demand the immediate unconditional release of the civilians taken captive yesterday and of all those held by ISIL. O'Reilly talked about this invisible coalition. The Emir of Qatar was at the White House yesterday. Is it invisible, or are the things being done that we just cannot report?
No, it's a lie. This coalition is a total lie. There are a handful of countries doing something. Most of it's just, they're chalking, the State Department's chalking up names. And for the State Department to demand that the prisoners should be released, if you really think Islamic State pays much attention to Jen Psaki? I mean, you've got to act. You cannot, cry crocodile tears and pretend that somehow, magically, this is going to go away. You must act. I mean, this is an extermination unfolding before our eyes. It is larger in scale, if more slow motion, than Rwanda. It's vastly larger in scale than Srebrenica and what was happening in the Balkans. It is the extermination of a 2,000-year-old civilization, and the world does nothing. And our president, what does he do? Persecutes Israel because he desperately wants a phony deal with Iran on nuclear weapons. It's going to be his legacy. His legacy is going to be an Iranian bomb.
More on that next, too, when Bibi Netanyahu addresses Congress. An Egyptian border official says 20,000 Egyptians have fled Libya since the beheading of those Egyptian Christians of 2 weeks ago.
ISIS beheading 21 Christians just because they are Christians. And still the White House is refusing to acknowledge the Egyptian victims were Christians. And Reverend Franklin Graham joins us from Samaritan's Purse. He joins us. Nice to see you, sir.
Thank you, Gladys. Good to be with you.
Reverend, I just read your Facebook page in which you say in part, I am perplexed as to why our president will not acknowledge the truth and call Islamic extremism what it is. In a statement, the White House even called the 21 Christians who were beheaded Egyptian citizens, refusing to identify them as Christians. Why do you think the president and the White House called them citizens and not Christians?
Greta, I have no idea. I'm baffled by this White House, and it seems as though they want to try to believe a lie, that everything's okay when it's not okay. And Greta, let me just say something about these men who cut the heads off. And I'd like to say something to them if they're watching. And I want them to know that what they did was evil, what they did was wrong. It was a sin against God. And I know they did this thinking they were pleasing God, but it doesn't. It's a sin. And God loves you, and God is willing to forgive you, but you've got to be willing to confess your sin to Him and ask for His forgiveness, and by faith invite His Son Jesus Christ into your heart. If you do that, God will forgive you for what you have done, and God will heal your heart, and He'll invite you to be with Him for eternity in heaven. Greta, I think it's important that the Muslim world know that God does love them, and He's made a way for them to be with Him in heaven, and that's through faith in His Son Jesus Christ. They don't have to cut off heads. They don't have to die in a holy war. It's simply by faith. And Greta, this is something that the White House doesn't understand, the religious aspect of this. And these men are doing what they are doing thinking they're pleasing God, because the Quran teaches this. Islam says you can have slaves. Islam says that you can cut the heads off of people, that you can kill Jews and Christians and Yazidis and anybody else that doesn't believe like you. And this is a religious aspect of
live
this.
in Washington this morning with the very latest for us. Martha, good morning.
Good morning, David. While the president is toning down his threatening language substantially, ISIS released an alarming new propaganda video, once again showing the utter brutality of ISIS, which humiliates, kills, and celebrates its barbarism.
The captured Syrian soldiers, some 150, are stripped to their underwear, forced to march across the desert after ISIS fighters, their black flags flying, took control of a Syrian air base. A short time later, the video shows them lying dead, executed. But President Obama is clearly trying to tamp down the emotional response to scenes like this and the execution of James Foley. A strategy for dealing with the terror group in Syria will take time, he said Thursday.
The suggestion seems to have been that, we're about to go full scale on an elaborate strategy for defeating ISIL. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. We don't have a strategy.
A stark admission since the threat of ISIS has increased at an astonishing rate in the last year, seizing large swaths of territory in Iraq while establishing a safe haven in nearby Syria. The Foley execution prompting the president to authorize spy planes over Syria just this week. But President Obama is now making clear that military action in Syria is not imminent.
I want to make sure everybody's clear on what we're doing now, because it is limited. The options that I'm asking for from the Joint Chiefs focuses primarily on making sure that ISIL is not overrunning Iraq.
Images. The Muslim Brotherhood carrying out vicious attacks on churches, homes, schools, and even an orphanage.
Can you imagine the outrage this administration would express if anywhere in the world Christians had burned 60 mosques? But the administration's response to the attacks upon the murder of Christians, the destruction of churches, some of them 1,600 years old, has been one clause in one sentence. And by the way, it's not just the administration. Astonishingly, Senator McCain, Senator Graham, and others on the right are saying nothing about this, but rather arguing that some magic how this marvelous Morsi Muslim Brotherhood government should be reinstated. We're being cowards, and it's fair game on Christians. And oh, by the way, as far as the left, you can excite more sympathy for the destruction of the Aztec and Mayan empires than for the destruction of 2,000 years of Christian civilization.
And welcome to the fourth quarter of my presidency. I am determined to make the most of every moment I have left.
All right, another clip from your email. Why September 20th is significant, I don't know, but listen to this now.
The event in which I planned on Tuesday, September the 20th in Washington, D.C. would have been a great attack against America. Even with my capture,
Fact is, though, at this point, my legacy is finally beginning to take shape.
We look at the problems that are confronting this country around the world, and you look at ISIS, for example. ISIS was created by Barack Obama.
Was moving too slowly, but the fall of Ramadi has galvanized the Iraqi government. So with the additional steps I ordered last month, we're speeding up training of ISIL forces, including volunteers from Sunni tribes in Anbar.
It sounds, frankly, like a nightmare. A group of extremists bent on atrocities is now openly and officially targeting Christians in Iraq. What's going on?
This is truly a living nightmare that's not going away. Christianity in Mosul is dead, and a Christian Holocaust is in our midst. 7 weeks ago, we went to Washington, D.C., and we actually were calling this a Christian genocide. And since then, day by day, it's getting worse and worse. More children are being beheaded. Mothers are being raped and killed. The fathers are being hung. But right now, 300,000 Christians are in Iraq, fleeing, living in neighboring cities, just wanting a chance not just to survive, but to live.
I want to go back, forgive me for interrupting, I want to go back to something you said, because the atrocities committed by ISIS are well known, but still you're startling me with the severity of what you're describing. You say they are beheading children?
They are systematically beheading children and mothers and fathers. The world hasn't seen an evil like this for generations. There's actually a park in Mosul that they've actually beheaded children and put their heads on a stick, and they have them in the park. This is crimes against humanity.
ISIS doesn't care because they have a kind of apocalyptic view of what they are doing. They truly believe that the end times are here, that they are part of a cosmic struggle between good and evil, and they're the good guys. This is arguably the most successful terrorist group in history in terms of recruitment and land that it controls.
It was widely reported that when ISIS took control of Mosul, which, depending on how you do the numbers, is the second largest city in Iraq, they gave Christians an ultimatum, which would be to convert to Islam, to pay a fine, or in their phrase, death by the sword. It's very.
We have 500 days to avoid the climate chaos. Very important issue of climate change, climate chaos, and I said that we had 500 days to avoid the climate chaos, and I know that President Obama and John Kerry himself are committed on this subject, and I'm sure that with them, with a lot of other friends, we should be able to reach success in this very important matter.
That there is a clip there from the French foreign minister who stated this. John Kerry was at his side at the second time he spoke about the 500 days to avoid the climate chaos. Now, ever since this has come out, it has sparked all kinds of speculations of what might happen. And people have counted down the 500 days. They put the timing at the 500 days from when he said this to September the 24th. There has been speculation that there is a meteorite that will be passing the earth at that time, and that this meteorite could in fact impact the earth, which could cause a global Francis has even published his encyclical wherein it is addressing climate change. Let me just quote to you from that what he says here. It says here, and I'm just reading you a portion of an article here that I pulled up from the internet that speaks about Pope's message on climate change was leaked. Was the title of this document here. It says, leaked documents or not, Francis remains enormously popular, and when he talks, world leaders and the media listen. Now there's a lot of things that are happening in September as it is. Pope Francis is visiting the United States. He's addressing both houses of Congress. We also know that he's going to the United Nations and addressing the United Nations there. He will be bringing and speaking about the encyclical about global climate change, among other issues as well. We believe that he's going to bring about also the New World Order. He's trying to unite the world together. He has been busy uniting the religions of the world together. And I want you to keep in mind as well as I'm speaking these things to you here, what is one of the major things that he united not too long ago? The Muslim world. He's really brought together the Muslim faiths from every walk that you can imagine, bringing them together, the different countries and their leaders, bringing them to the Vatican, doing prayers with them, showing them that they are all one. Another odd thing is, though, is he's very much pro-Muslim, but he's not pro-Jewish. In fact, if anything, he's done everything he can to undermine Israel's right to their own land, including, as we have published here quite frequently here lately, that they're internationalizing Jerusalem. And it's amazing, not very many news sources have picked up on this. In fact, if you're able to share that, if you're able to take and even post the videos about Jerusalem being internationalized and get it on every news forum and in their comment sections that you possibly can to wake up people of what's going on, I would greatly appreciate that. Because
now let me read you this article from Newsweek posted on January 19th, 2015. Pope Francis will visit New York City and Washington, D.C. in addition to Philadelphia during his visit to the United States this fall. Archbishop Bernardino Auza, a member of the organizing committee for this trip, said Sunday. Francis' September visit will be his first to the United States since he was elected head of the Roman Catholic Church in March of 2013. Speaking to the Catholic News Agency in Manila on Sunday, where the Pope recently wrapped up a week-long visit to Asia, Auza said, Francis planned to arrive on the 22nd of September and leave on the evening of the 27th. It's really a full 6 days, plus the travel, so it's really 1 week, he said. The Vatican later announced Francis's intention to visit Philadelphia for the 2015 World Meeting of Families, a religious conference for Catholics on the topic of family life, which will take place from the 22nd until the 25th of September. It's interesting that the article mentions 6 days and a week, since September 2015 is the end of the 6th day of Daniel's 70th week, and then there is 1 day or 1 year left until the end of the week, which ends in the fall of 2016. So we have the Pope arriving in the United States on September 22nd. We have the World Meeting of Families starting on September 22nd in Philadelphia, which is the one church in Revelation that is kept from the hour of trial that comes on the whole world. Philadelphia is also the city where the Liberty Bell is located, which has inscribed on it the verse from Leviticus 25 about the year of Jubilee that begins on the Day of Atonement, 49 years after Israel enters the land that the Lord gives to her. September 23, 2015, is the end of 49 prophetic years from when Israel recaptured Jerusalem on June 7, 1967. The Day of Atonement in America actually starts at midday on September 22nd. Now watch this clip.
The world needs to know, even though they're going to announce it eventually, and they may announce it this September. The world needs to know. They need to know what they're doing to the Jewish people. But of course, when they announce it, it's going to be announced as a great thing. All the while, the Jewish people will be going through a great birth pain as they're being uprooted out of Jerusalem, while the Pope of Rome and the dignitaries and all the world leaders are going to say it was a great thing that they've done. I believe this is something that's going to happen in September at the United Nations meeting as well. They're going to divide Israel. Now, whether or not the Palestinians get their state then, it's not known, but I do believe they're going to show then that Jerusalem is now an international city for all religions. Okay? There's going to be a temple. But the court which is without the temple, leave out, measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread underfoot 42 months. That's right, the outer court has been given to the Vatican. It's already been given to the Vatican. That's the sad part. The Vatican already has that outer court. They were given Mount Zion. Prophecy was fulfilled on Mount Zion in the book of Obadiah when the Pope of Rome came and drank on the mountain. It says, and I'm just paraphrasing this, they shall drink, or you shall drink. It's talking about the holy mountain of God in Obadiah. Let's actually read it. You know, this I believe this is a very important broadcast that we're doing here, and we don't want any mistakes made on this. It's in verse 16, for as you drunk upon my holy mountain, so shall all the heathen drink continually. Yea, they shall drink, and they shall swallow down, and they shall be as though they had not been. Now, that is identified clearly to Esau and his descendants that would drink upon the mountain. And of course, all the nations. In the Hebrew language, shutatetem is in the plural masculine, showing that men only would be partakers of that first Mass, as the Catholic Church did on Mount Zion in the upper room above King David's tomb. The following week, it was inclusive, and even in the Hebrew language, it's gender inclusive plural, showing that both men and women would partake of the next Mass. And that's exactly the way it happens. Rome reports clearly identified it. They made the mistake of making it public. I got the video and was able to prove it. It's exactly right. And they put a lot of safeguards in their video too, because they didn't want nobody being able to reproduce it. Well, Pope of Rome, you're a little bunch of thugs, you're busted, because you said in Rome reports, you stated in there that the Pope and his delegation and the priests that were there in Jerusalem were the only ones that could participate. Satan is ready to come on and to be worshipped as well, by the way. He wants to be like God and be sitting in the temple of God and be worshipped as if he were God. Being in the temple of God, that's another thing that brings a very interesting thought to mind. We know that on the 12th of July this month, the Temple Institute says that they have some important news to announce to the world that will change the world. Could it be that they're going to announce the beginning of the construction of the third temple? By the way, that's the prerequisite for the two witnesses coming on the scene. That's another thing that Pope of Rome knows as well. Because in Revelation 11 it says, let's look at that real quick. And there was given me a reed like unto a rod, and the angel stood saying, rise and measure the temple of God and the altar and them that worship therein. So there's going to be a temple. And all the different little Muslim nations there, they come together and they're against Israel. And yes, they are. The United Nations in September is going to vote. The French, along with another nation, has got together with the French that are going to vote what? They're going to vote to bring in, to make a Palestinian state. They're bringing a resolution for a Palestinian state. They're confederate against Israel. And of course, the churches that side with the Vatican. Do you know that on the 20th of September, the World Council of Churches for a week or for 6 days is doing a march against the Jews, against Israel? It says that Israel is there illegally occupying Palestine? You churches that have joined the Vatican, my brothers and sisters that are a part of it, get out of these churches. I would not want to be at the same table with a church that supports the Vatican. No wonder why God says, come out of her. Revelation, I believe it's 18:4. Come out of her, my people, and be not partakers of her sins. And her plagues, by the way. And the two witnesses are bringing the plagues. You don't think that the plagues won't strike your home? if you're a part of that, the only ones that will be spared, the United Nations, or those World Council of Churches, every one of them are confederate together with the Pope of Rome against Israel and calling Israel occupiers of the land that God gave them. And the land that God prophesied in Zechariah, Isaiah, many other places in the Bible that they would come home to their land.
The researchers here are looking for what they call dark matter, thought of as a cosmic tree from which our galaxies, shown in pink, grew like blossoms. So how long before they discover the first hard evidence for it?
It could be as early as this year. Summer may be a bit hard, but late summer maybe could be as early as September if we're really lucky.
The current theory explains how just 5% of the universe works. Researchers hope they'll soon find evidence of mind-bending new theories that involve extra dimensions, invisible so-called supersymmetric particles, and ones from what researchers call the dark universe.
Just some private sources that are saying that CERN will be fired back up in September as well. Now, we already know from the news I gave you the other day, CERN has even admitted themselves, the director of CERN, that they're trying to reach into other dimensions. They see apparitions when they fire CERN up. I mean, they are definitely going for another dimension. It's going to loose Satan. And let me say this, I don't want to confuse this wording here. Satan's already loose. We know that. Satan is the accuser of the brethren. We know that Satan goes and causes trials and temptations and causes a lot of problem. But there are certain demons, though, that are bound in that river Euphrates, and this is going to open that door for those demons to come out.
I finally fell asleep
Who knows?
And dreamed I was walking along a village road. Children dressed only in strings of beads played in front of the round huts, and several old men waved to me as I passed. But as I went farther along, I began to notice that people were looking behind me fearfully, rushing into their huts as I passed. I heard the growl of a leopard and started to run into the forest, tripping over roots and stumps and vines, until at last I couldn't run any longer and I fell to my knees in the middle of a bright clearing. Panting for breath, I turned around to see the day turn to night, and a giant figure looming as tall as the trees, wearing only a loincloth and a ghostly mask. The lifeless eyes bored into me, and I heard a thunderous voice saying only that it was time, and my entire body began to shake violently with the sound, as if I were breaking apart. I jerked up with a sweat, hitting my head against the wall lamp that stuck out above the bunk. In the darkness, my heart slowly evened itself.
Begin with Pope
but I couldn't
Francis
get back
saying
to sleep.
atheists get into heaven. Pastors are saying it's okay to smoke weed. And let's not forget about the homosexual agenda. We've got a president who says it's okay to have same-sex marriages. Jesus said it's going to be like the days of Lot. Sodom and Gomorrah is going to come back alive. Here we see a Christian preacher being attacked by a homosexual mob. Muslims were accused of beheading 2 Christians in the United States already. We've got the blatant call for the death of religion by famous TV personalities. So you're going to see things like this, shooting at Creflo Dollar's megachurch, pastor killed, 2 hurt in Illinois church shooting, American Muslims stoned Christians in Dearborn, Michigan, a judge finds preacher guilty of disorderly conduct for preaching near a bar, street preachers do get killed in the United States, here we go, gunman executes woman while she decorates church. From jailing evangelists to church bomb plots, Christian persecution is on the rise. Here's another attack on Christians while preaching the gospel to a homosexual crowd. Police don't do anything, and they just keep attacking these guys and attacking these guys. Pray for our brothers who do this kind of work, like myself. Evangelist jailed for preaching at a train station. A missionary was jailed in North Carolina for telling officers to repent. Philadelphia police cited this preacher for being flashed by a female heckler. Christians arrested for preaching in New Orleans after sunset. Police vow to target the churches. And this Phoenix preacher was actually sentenced to jail for holding home worship meetings in his own property. Now this preacher was just singing and preaching and was attacked by 2 men with knives. And then this man was heroic and helped the guy who was being attacked. He was a Walmart employee. Illinois man arrested for plotting to bomb dozens of Oklahoma churches. International code may force home churches, small groups to pony up, shut up, or go underground. And it just goes on and on and on. ordinance targeting free speech. There's no surprise. Christians have been deemed terrorists. Watch my video on this. This is not a joke. They will be targeting Christians. They're being warned about Christians who take the Bible literally, and we are being labeled as extremists, terrorists. We will be put on the watch lists and denied guns. Our phones will be tapped. Our homes will be tapped. Crackdowns on universities are no surprise. Bible studies in college dorm rooms are being shut down. And I didn't even have time to get into all the military persecutions and people being court-martialed for their faith.
Daniel, chapter 9, verse 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the command to restore and build Jerusalem until Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublesome times. My friends, we just got a breaking news headline from the Temple Institute's own official Facebook page, where they are stating that on Sunday, July 12th, the Temple Institute will be making an important announcement that will shape what they call our future. It goes on to say to share this post with someone you care for in just 6 days. The future will begin. July 12th, the future is in our hands. Be a part of it. Are they gonna announce what I think they're gonna announce? Is this the rebuilding of the third temple that they're going to announce in less than 6 days? We know that the Temple Institute, founded in 1987, is a non-profit educational and religious organization. They're located in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem's Old City. The Institute is dedicated to every aspect of what they dub the biblical commandment to build the holy temple of God on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem, also known as the Third Temple. We're living in the last days. We're currently in the time of the Shemitah, Elul 29, September 12, 2015, the blood red moons, the tetrad, the sun turning into darkness, the moon turning into blood, famines, earthquakes, pestilences, distress of nations with perplexity, the seas and the waves roaring, continued false Christs and false prophets trying to rise up and show signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the very elect. Even a rabbi over in Israel claiming that the rabbi has received confirmation that the arrival of the Messiah's stage is set. And that now Israel is expecting the soon imminent arrival of who they call the Messiah. Or is it the Antichrist?
Matthew 24 and Luke 21 says it so clearly. He's telling us to prepare. He said when all these things happen at once, only a handful of people are going to be ready compared to the population of this world. Will you be one of them? As perilous times come, we want to pray these things away. We got to understand this has to happen. This must come forth. This was God's word. He said that there would be a time of despair to come like no other since the beginning of time. So that means despair will be worse than ever than in the days of Noah, when only 8 people survived. We got to wake up. We got to understand. Stop trying to get caught up in the cares of this world. We want to listen to people talking about money and riches and promotions and things like this, and we see this world is falling apart. Sum up, the Bible says basically the bolder Satan, the closer God. This world has never been this bold. This world has never been this evil collectively. More Christians have been killed than ever before. Go to opendoors.com. More Christians have been killed than ever before collectively worldwide. While we worried about what's going on with Empire, while we worried about Housewives, while we worried about this and that, and Michael Kors and everything else, this world is falling apart right before our very eyes. Only the remnant is seeing. Time to wake up. It's time to don't let the blood be in your hands. Ezekiel 33 tells us plainly, if we do not warn, we will have the blood of these people on our hands. So you sitting back, comfortable Christian in your home, understand that God is trying to wake you up. He's trying to tell you that the blood of these people are going to be in your hands. You see these things happening, yet you shut up in your own little comfortable place of living and you don't want to say nothing. While your brethren dies right next to you. While they're being led into a pit of hell. It's time to wake up. No more praying. God is coming back.